Hello, everyone, and welcome to the podcast today. We have Antonio with us. So he's a full stack marketer, Facebook ad specialist, managed more than $300 million in ad spend. And yeah, he's just great in ads overall. And today we're going to get his expertise on all of the things he's been testing related to Andromeda with Facebook ads. So he knows all about it. He's doing with his clients in his company, and he's tested all the things for us. So hopefully today we can get some insight. And specifically for our audience, it's more about lead gen, high ticket, things like that. And but generally ad strategies are quite similar. So maybe you can give us some insight on what he's seen working in different industries for his clients and what he's actually tested. But maybe if you don't mind, you can give us like a 30-second introduction on all the things you do and who your company is and what you get up to.
100%, yeah, 100%. Hey guys, happy to be here. Excited as usual. I love talking about this. I breathe this. I've been doing this for over 10 years, so it has been fun. I've managed over $300 million in ad spend. Started in local businesses over 10 years ago. Probably the first course that made me want to get into the space was Sam Melvin's consulting when he launched consulting.com. So that was amazing. He talked about scientific testing, how you should test every single variable like a mad scientist. So this really made me very interested in just app buying in general. And obviously, I mean, as a teenager at the time, I had the kind of dream of getting my backpack and traveling the world while I made a lot of money via my laptop. Nowadays, I barely leave. I barely leave my home, but I'm still as passionate about this. And yeah, since then, I mean, I've done so many things. I've ran ads for clients like Russ Rufino, even Mike Tyson. My first big agency experience was in the US, a New Jersey-based agency called Client Accelerators from Mike Montempo. Shout out to him. He's an amazing legend. I gave my first opportunity around, I think, 2020 or 2021 in the US, because that was my first like US-based agency experience. And then since then, I've been managing bigger and bigger clients. I've been consulting to clients. I've been a higher speaker. I've spoken to events, like, for example, Craig Ballantyne, a mentor, friend, and client of mine as well. He invited me to his mastermind as well. And I spoke there for a room full of business owners. That was awesome. And then obviously, I run campaigns individually up to 200K a day, 250K a day. So obviously that's, I guess that's some decent kind of spend. And I've tested everything under the sun, especially via meta ads, right? So that's my specialty, meta ads, even though I've ran a lot of Google ads, and quite some TikTok ads as well. But yeah, I think that's a summary.
Fantastic, yeah. So great to hear that. So I heard Mike Tyson there, and obviously Ross Rufino. So I think that could be relevant for the audience we have, which is more like high ticket lead gen. You mentioned Sam Evans. Most guys watching probably know about Sam Evans. I've been in his programs myself, so it'd be good to get insight, like maybe what some of the things that you've seen on that end. So maybe let's just start with Andromeda itself. So what have you seen play out? This is like the hot topic. Everyone's worried. Everyone's paranoid. And obviously, some people have probably realized as well that it's been slowly rolling out over the past 6 to 12 months. So what have you seen? How have you prepared? You probably already knew about it in terms of getting the results and stuff.
Yeah, 100%. So, I mean, the biggest thing with Andromeda is that it rewards creative uniqueness, right? So, more and more. So, a lot of people use the old structure, which in some accounts, I mean, still works to a certain extent, right? Of testing micro variables, right? So, testing hooks, testing backgrounds, testing a small headline, testing different bodies with different call to actions, etc., etc. And literally testing every single one of these as small variables, which is in a way the very Sam Ovens-like approach, at least from 2014. I don't know how he's running ads nowadays, to be very honest. But it's a very Sam Ovens type approach to a certain extent. And it works. And to some extent, it still works, but it's just harder and harder to scale with that approach, right? More and more teams are having to change to produce more creatives, at volume, and honestly, with more variety, right? So more variety. So I think people need to think more and more like marketers, and this really hasn't changed as much for marketers who already used to create their creatives and their creative strategy based on avatars, right? More and more, for example, a very classic structure is instead of having the same body, the same winning body for testing 5 different hooks, for example, which a lot of people used to do, you probably would need to test 5 different bodies, but each for a different sub avatar group for your specific niche and your specific offer, right? So yeah, and that's a big change, because it's not just a media buying change if you think about it, but it's also a business change to some extent, because people are having to plug AI into their system to be able to do this at volume. Probably it's not going to be with a graphic designer or a video editor that they have for 5 years that they're going to be able to do that. So it's really a change on their systems, a change on their process, a change on their people, and the way they leverage AI as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So, in terms of someone now starting lead gen, high ticket, launching their ads, right? Let's say they're the first time. Let's say they have not been running ads for quite a long time. What's the kind of approach you would recommend taking? Like, how many, unique ads or avatars are they supposed to be targeting? And what would your strategy be? So let's say someone's starting $100 a day, which is actually going to be most people starting at $50 to $100 a day for consulting lead gen, right? And then once things work, and they spend more, right? So let's say in that first stage, maybe from a stage like $50, like how much should it be testing? What should the approach be? Should it be like one ad only, or like 10 or 20? The idea behind that.
Yeah, by definition, I mean, if you're just starting, 100% is going to be testing. so that's it. But obviously, you can maximize your chances of success day one, especially if you do good competitors research and avatar research, right? Because basically speaking, I mean, grossly speaking, there are many different ways to do that. But grossly speaking, you can either do your first ads based on what's working on the market, which I love, or based also on your avatar research, what are their pain points, their needs, and the formats they're already used to looking. You can look at many different sources. You can look at Amazon reviews, YouTube comments, Facebook comments, actually interview. If you already have a base of clients, actually interview this base of clients to understand their pain points, their desires. This is the kind of approach that copywriters will have, for example, and even marketers in general, which I really like, right? A second approach, and typically they go hand in hand, right? You don't need to do them isolated. You should do both, and then probably do the best out of grab the best out of the two, which is just looking at competitors via Dad's library, via spy tools, understanding what they're running, for how long, at how much spend, how they have been duplicating their ads, because this is something you can check in the ads library based on how many ads they have duplicated, for example. Sometimes it can be a good proxy for are they scaling or not. Sometimes it isn't, right? So we can talk about this for hours. But then based on that, based on what's working on the market, and based on your avatar research, then you can try to improve what's already working, right? And not just throwing things at the wall. And then launching your first ads. Now, in terms of structure, how many ads you should test, you have like 50 or $100 per day. There are so many structures that work, right? So I'm never going to be the guy, a guru type guy who's going to say this is the only thing that works. So first things first, that's it. So take everything I say with a grain of salt. You need to test in your specific account. Even fun fact, if you test the same creatives, the same ad structure, everything the same fun, you test in 10 different ad accounts, the results are going to be different in 10 different ad accounts, right? So this is, I mean, when I say this to people, sometimes it's mind blowing, but if you think about it, it makes a lot of sense, right? Because every ad account has its own learning, right? Obviously, if you're also changing the pixel, it's just different data algorithm, literally. But also, every ad account has its own quality score. So, and every campaign has different clusters, right? So every campaign goes to different people initially. So yeah, results are going to be different for 10 different ad accounts running exactly the same thing. So that's first things first. I think that's a very good, honestly, concept to have. That typically you need statistical significance, because it really depends on your assets as well. It doesn't depend just on your creatives, your ads, and your structure. It also depends on your ad account, your pixel quality, and all that fun stuff. Having said that, so my ideal initial structure typically is at least having 2 or 3 sub avatars, right? So let's say I have a client selling radios, for example, and you're spending anywhere from 40 to 100K a day, right? Typically, it's around 40 to 70K a day. And he has an avatar that's people building these radios for their families, right? Because they think it's going to be fun. They have another avatar that's survivalist, I think is the name. So people who think the world is going to end and they need to survive. So having these emergency radios is going to be the last of their hopes. They have another angle that's younger folks, right? I think is going to be fun. So they have a lot of different avatars. Some of them are honestly, let's say, better or at least yield better LTV than others, obviously. But these are the avatars. If I was just starting from scratch and I just saw that via avatar research, right? YouTube comments, interviewing my clients, interviewing potential clients, and all the fun stuff, I will probably have 3 or 4 batches of creatives based on these avatars. So I'll probably have one batch for the survivalist avatar, one batch for the family-oriented avatar, etc., right? And for each of these batches, I'll make sure I will be testing 3 to 10 completely different ads based on what I've seen working in the market, right? So and this is both types, visual formats, and angles, right? Ideally, you could have one campaign per avatar if you wanted to, right? Honestly, with 50 to $100 budget, it would really depend. If you're running lead gen, your target cost per lead would probably need to be very low for you to be able to do this, to fragment your sub avatars. If your, for example, your target cost per lead is 100, right, which in some niches it is, and you're spending 100 a day, then you can only have one CBO campaign testing all of that, literally. So that's the first thing I'll do, right? And then if you just can't do that, obviously at a campaign level and fragment everything, which I will love because every obviously avatar is going to behave completely differently, right, based on your creatives. Then campaign level, right, and then at the ad set level, you have your avatars and sub avatars batches, right? So you have, for example, 3 ad sets, each for one avatar or sub avatar, and then for each of these, I'll have the same type of formats that I'll be testing for each of these avatars. So, for example, 5 ads within the same ad set, depending on your creative capability, right? Is this a lot? 100%. Like it's a lot of ads to test in the beginning. Will you be able to trust the algo 100% to find the best pockets of audiences? In short, no, because when you have a new account, it doesn't have good quality data, but you're going to have to do that regardless, right? So naturally, it's going to pull the spend to 1 or 2 or max 3 creatives if you're doing this at one campaign, pretty much using CDO. And then based on the results of these initial ads that are pulling all the spend, you're going to have to either pause or obviously if it's working, scale and isolate the ads into new campaigns after that.
Yep, fantastic. Yeah, yeah. Makes I like the avatar model, of course. So you want to different ads for different avatars. That makes total sense, right? Because you got different people that are buying your specific thing. One thing I was going to say as well, because with this new update, people have been hearing a lot about that you don't need interest anymore. Would you say have you gone down that direction for all of your clients and your accounts, or are you still doing interest? Like, what's your take on that? Because even for me, like I've used like Lead and Force and different tools like Hypersegment, and it's worked. Of course, it's worked very well. But and you look like audiences and different things like that. But have you gone away from there? Or are you still using, or are you like in the middle somewhere? Like, what's your take on it?
Still using it, even though I think the trend is obviously for you to use it less and less. That's definitely the general trend. And I think I've been fortunate enough to be involved in way too many accounts because obviously I have literally thousands of students with a course that Chris Reader called me to launch with him to be a partner with no zero profit system, teaching people how to run pay-per-call, right? Teaching students how to run a pay-per-call, and they're having a lot of success, which is amazing. So we have access to like literally thousands of people doing completely different things in their ad accounts and reviewing these ad accounts. Apart from that, obviously, in Hyros, I have access to other like hundreds of business owners who tell me what they're doing so I can consult them. So I'm able to look at the general trends, but then obviously as an individual media buyer, I'm also testing these things in my accounts, even though it's a limited number of accounts. And I know exactly what works in general and what sometimes just doesn't work as well, right? So in general, yes, that's the short answer. But individually, the more niched your account, especially if you don't have a trainer pixel, the more you just can't just forget about interest right now. You can't just go broad if your pixel doesn't know who your target is. And if you're not optimizing for a decent quality conversion, it's actually giving you results, right? For example, I'm going to give a very specific example. If you're running a call funnel, at the end of the day, you need qualified calls for your sales team, right, to convert. If you have a low budget, let's say you're starting at $50 a day, right? For some niches, a good cost per qualified call is going to be $200, depending on the niche. Depending, it's very high ticket, right? If it's 10K, 20K, or over that, it's going to be very hard to get a cost per call under $200 or even $300 or even more, depending on the niche, right? And it's fine because if the quality is good, you're still going to have insane ROI because it's very high ticket, right? So you could technically have like $500 per qualified call, really qualified call. But obviously, if you're closing one out of two, it's still like 10x, 10x ROAS, right? If you have a 10K program, for example, right? So it's too low of a budget. So probably you're not going to be able to start optimizing necessarily for qualified call in the beginning if you have this low of a budget. So maybe you're going to optimize, let's say, for a lead, right? Which is something you can test. Ideally, I'll definitely optimize for a qualified call, but maybe you're optimizing for a lead or at least for a non-qualified call, right? Or at least for calls in general. And if you're doing this, you're going to have to try interest because if you go broad and you're optimizing for an event that honestly is not your ideal event, anybody can just opt in, put their email. That's a lead, right? That's an opt in. Then you're probably going to get hurt, right? Now, obviously, another way to do that, that's one way of doing it, which is trying to have both targeted creatives and interests. So in many accounts, especially new ones and especially more niched accounts, right? And you're going to have to test out both. Still test interest, yes, especially lookalikes. They still work really well. Some pre-made interests on Facebook still work really well depending on the niche. I love job titles whenever I can. For example, if I have avatars that are job title specific, the job title audiences interests still work really well. Having said that, there's a second way of doing it, which is also just going completely broad, but having very specific call outs in your ads, right? For example, I talked to a media buyer, and actually he's a CMO, it's not just a media buyer, of a company doing about 200 to 250 a day yesterday running GLP, right? In their strategy, they're calling the anti-Andromeda strategy because pretty much they have a creative variation per age. And I've never seen this in my life, I swear to God. But they know their avatar is women over 40, pretty much. And because you can target women 40 years old, 41, 42, etc., until 65 plus, they literally have 26 ad sets, each with one creative, each creative calling out, hey, if you're a woman 41 and you have 41 years old and you want to lose weight for the summer, yada, 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 right? And then 42, 43 years old, 44, it's crazy. It's insane. But they're calling this the anti-Andromeda strategy. I think it's a good extreme example because not everybody can do this strategy, obviously. You probably need that shitload of budget as well. But you wouldn't need in that strategy a super trained pixel. And you wouldn't need necessarily interest either for two reasons. First, because in weight loss, it's a very general offer, right? So literally almost, not any woman, but a lot of women are going to want to lose weight. And secondly, because they're targeting age by age, you're not really relying on pockets of audiences necessarily because you know the pocket is the age, right? So there's so many variants of strategies that you can use that you don't rely on interest anymore, that I think it is a very valid strategy. But once again, the nearer your pixel is with less data, right? And the more niched your offer is, I still use interest in general. Yes, I still test them at least.
Yeah, fantastic. Yeah, because I feel like especially with our audience, like it's going to be call funnels. Our clients, we only do high tech call funnels. It's something we might start testing more, like the whole broad thing. But we've always done the interests and not interest specifically, but scraping audiences like lead enforced and then creating lookalikes, things like that, right?
Yes.
So yeah, we'll just have to see how it plays out. But I'm also curious to know when it comes to making all this creative, because a big thing now, because even before like Andromeda, right, like in Avro, even our agency clients for ads, right, like if you ask someone to record an ad, you wait like 1 or 2 weeks because and this was before this update where you need more creative, right? And now we need so many more. So have you gone towards using AI creatives at all, or like more image AI creatives? And if so, what results have you seen? Have you like tested it too? Because I'm actually curious to know, like, even for outline, like how does AI play out versus like real humans and real actors? So maybe let's get your take on that on AI versus normal ads.
Yeah. Honestly, especially in the testing stage, I have seen similar performance. Now, obviously, if you're able to do like 50 AI ads versus 50 actor ads are going to outperform. Don't get me wrong. We're still at that point. And maybe, I mean, in 1 month, people are watching this 1 month from now, maybe we'll have changed, literally, because it changes so fast. It's crazy. Like nowadays, especially via ads, we can already be looking at ads sometimes that are AI made and you can't even tell, right? Especially depending on not only the quality of the video, but also depending on how it is with the editing style, how it is with, okay, is it just the AI talking to you, or is it a small frame and it's sharing something in the screen, etc., etc. So there are many different techniques to make it even harder for somebody to notice. But yeah, well, for my campaigns and my clients' campaigns, whenever I can, I just push AI creatives like a maniac, um, both images and videos. Right, videos. If you have a really good process for lip sync, for example, a lot of people running or using Dreamface for lip sync, which works really well, and it yields really realistic results, honestly. Then honestly, yeah, it's going to be 80% there, maybe even more, maybe 90% there, right? For images, you have a lot of tools that create images at scale. Now, obviously, you can just use ChatGPT. I still use ChatGPT sometimes to give me some brand new ideas, especially opening new chats and giving him decentish prompts without framing too much the visuals, otherwise it's going to get a little bit addicted to the same visual frame in a way. But for example, ideogram is a really good tool, for example, for you to create different variations fast, and they're different enough as well, right? So it's not just micro variations, but it's really different variations. I really love it. I love that tool, and there are so many, honestly. Like, don't get stuck on the tool, obviously, because AI tools, they change once again every week. But the fact is, it's just much faster, right? It's much faster compared to hiring actors, whatever, in Fiverr, than sending them scripts, then making mistakes on your scripts, then you having to review the scripts, yada yada. If you're a marketer nowadays, you can do it all by yourself, or at least honestly with an assistant that you can send the process to him, right? And because once again, Andromeda rewards variety, right? It really doesn't need to be perfect. Don't need too much of a perfectionist. Like, by all means, have a testing structure that's a perfectionist one. So have a testing structure that really aims at testing every single variable, testing emotions, testing visual formats, testing different types of copy and all that fun stuff. But in terms of execution, yeah, especially when you're testing out, do not try to be a perfectionist. Try to push as much volume and variety as possible for each of your main avatars and sub avatars and concepts that you're testing. And then you're going to see patterns, right? And then, as any media buyer in the world, it's about pattern recognition, understanding what are the types of formats, not only visual, but also script formats, and angles that are working for each avatar, and then doubling down on them. And then, by all means, if you see, oh, there's always the, let's say, fear-based emotion in my hooks that is absolutely crushing in terms of hook rates for my videos, then sure, now when I'm going to create videos based on that to scale, now maybe I'm going to hire actors to have better quality. That's still the framework that a lot of companies are going to be using. Even though, once again, I think in the next months more and more, and even for myself, I've scaled companies to over 10K a day, 50K a day, 100K a day, just with AI already, right? So it's not the standard by all means, right? It really depends on the offer, especially, I mean, if it's spokesperson based, it's going to be very hard to do that, for example, just to give an example. But it's already possible.
So, if you get them to 50K a day with obviously with AI ads, there's going to be quite a lot of generations of ads that you're going to be doing, right? Like it's going to be a lot of ads, right? I mean, it should be a lot of ads, like image, video, and then obviously you got to upload into the ads manager unless you have some automation for that, right? It's all the uploading, and so maybe let's start with like, what's your flow for making all of these ads? Because there's going to be quite a lot, right?
Yeah.
And then maybe after that we can get into like how you even like get it into the ads manager, all those ads and creatives and copy and stuff like that.
For sure, yeah, 100%. So first, there's the ideation. Right? So first, having a good framework to even ideate the ads and understand before you just, hey, let's just create hundreds of ads. You understand why you created them and what's your structure to actually create them and test them, right? Which is in a way creates a strategy, right? It's being a creative strategist more than a media buyer in the beginning. And it comes down to a certain extent to the structure I mentioned before, right? So to first having done your avatar research properly, your sub avatar research properly, your competitor benchmarking properly, because you kind of already know the formats that are working in the market, the types of ads, right? The media type, even the angles that are working, and based on avatars and sub avatars, right? So when you do that, you already have at least an initial framework to test. So at least have some data, especially, let's say if you're running from scratch, that's the case. If you're not running from scratch, obviously, then you already have some data, your own data, which is even better, right? Because I prefer your own data than anybody else's data, obviously, for your specific assets and your specific production. But that's the ideation stage. So having a really good framework to, okay, how am I going to produce these ads? After you have this framework, then it started already working with the media buyer. Now, obviously, I wear many hats because I'm a media buyer, creative strategist for some companies. I've been the head of marketing, right? So obviously, I try to think more of as a CMO nowadays than as a media buyer. But that's why I'm going to go over every hat. And then if you want, as a company, you listening to us, you can obviously hire different people for every role, or you can bundle these roles into the same people, right? So anyways, so after this creative strategy work, then you start working with the media buyer to a certain extent to try to understand how he's gonna grab these creatives that you have, right, and structure them in a very ideally safe-driven approach, especially in the beginning, right? After that, you can obviously risk it out a little bit more with the budget. Ideally, he's still doing 80-20, right? 80% of winners, 20% of testing. That's what I aim for, right? And as fast as possible, literally, as soon as I find winners, I try to spend 80% of them and test with 20% of my budget. That's kind of the overall framework. Now, obviously, it's not always going to be 80-20, sometimes 70-30, sometimes 60-40 if I need to test a huge batch, etc., etc. But I aim for that, right? But anyways, and then he's going to have to understand for the specific accounts that you guys are running, what's the structure that actually translates this creative strategy into a sound media buying approach. And once again, it depends so much on the niche, but I've seen niches, I've seen affiliates, for example, just putting all of this into a big CBO campaign, like I mentioned before, and sometimes just having bid caps, right? Or cost caps. I prefer cost caps, by the way. I haven't used bid caps as much. So typically target cost per result. And then apart from target cost per result, another just cap in general I've liked is just target ROAS as well, right? So I think these two have been working right now, but really right now, because once again, these things tend to change somewhat fast. But anyway, so you can throw everything into the same campaign. I will still have at least an ad set structure for every avatar, or sometimes you can test concepts at the ad set level as well, right? So having each main concept or emotion, right? Or even sometimes formats, visual formats at the ad set level, and then having the batches for each ad set, just letting the algo choose from that concept the best variations, right? Still unique variations, but there's still variations of the same concept. Just to give you an example, let's say your concept is testing pain-based statics, right? But then every static is a unique visual format, but focusing on the pain as a messaging, right? For example, that could be a concept testing. And then you have pain, you have shock, you have whatever other emotions that you want to test, and then you're going to test specific variations at the ad level, right? So that's a structure, for example. And then the media buyer has to understand, okay, what's the structure that's working, and then do the media plan, right? So for example, if you know you can just throw everything into the campaign and use cost caps, you can just do that. It's very simple. But for a lot of accounts, it's not that simple, right? For a lot of accounts, maybe, first, you don't have enough testing budget, right? So you just can't throw everything at the same time, especially if your budget is relatively small. If you have 100 of ads to test, you don't necessarily want to launch 100 ads and pray for the algo to do something with them with bid caps, especially because you're not going to be testing all of them, right? Secondly, for a lot of companies, they actually want to test for X number of reasons. They want to test specific concepts, right? So they want to see what's going to work with the survivalist avatar, right? Because they're doing an event for survivalists. This happens all the time in corporate. They're doing an event and they need to test that specific angle for the launch because they want to bring more survivalists for that specific event. So you have to prioritize based on that as well. Right? You have to prioritize based on business goals and not just on, hey, what's the ideal media buying structure? And I think that's why having business sense is so important, more than just being a technically good media buyer, right? So based on these variables, then the media buyer does his media plan, right? So how soon am I going to roll out these creatives with what bids, or is it going to be auto bidding? What's the budget for each of these? And what's going to be my plan after I have some data for this first initial batch, for example. And then after that, ideally, I like having a team review, right? So it's both creative strategist, media buyer, and ideally a manager as well that has the business goals in mind understanding, okay, what worked? Let's analyze the creatives, let's analyze the hook rates, the hold rates of the videos, and obviously, ideally, if you can, the ROAS, the ROI for each creative. So whenever you can, I would definitely analyze the ROI, because regardless of the front end metrics, a different creative can produce massively different ROI, as probably most of you watching know, right? So have this all in the sheet, have every single metric in the funnel aggregated by creative, and then review this as a team to understand how you're going to iterate on the next batch. And honestly, that's the most important part, right? Because even if you don't know what you're doing in the ideation stage, even if your media buyer is just throwing everything into a CBO campaign with no strategy and just letting the algo do its thing, after you review, if you're actually reviewing all the metrics for every single creative, then it's relatively easy to understand what are the next steps.
Yep, makes sense. So when it comes to the actual, because obviously different clients you have, you're going to spend different amounts on the ads, right? But in terms of the AI workflow itself, right, do you have specific tools that you use, like one or two that maybe one for image, one for video, and you just like make 100 through there? And then like after you make them, are you just uploading them manually? Do you have the ones like, because I've seen some like Arcads and like Creatify that connect to your ads manager and they just post them in, and some of them even launch campaigns from there directly as well, and they even optimize and stuff like that. So where are you in the cycle? Are you in just you just use the tool to produce and then you upload and manage yourself, or are you also, do you have tools where you also upload it? Because there's going to be a lot of creatives, right? If you're doing 50K a day, you're probably doing thousands of creatives. So how are you managing that workflow?
Yeah, when I get to that point, ideally I want to have a person or a VA who's actually helping me with just creating the ads that I tell them to. So I try to be the creative strategist, because I think is the most important part, and then the media buying strategist as well, which I think is the second most important part, right? So I'm going to tell somebody, hey, I need this batch with this brief. We already have a briefing structure as well. So if I can, I'm not actually creating every single ad via AI, right? So that's the first step. Obviously, if I'm an affiliate and I'm starting a new campaign, I have to create my own ads, right? And I have to upload my own ads. I have to do everything myself, right? But ideally, that's my ideal role. Right? I'm telling somebody to create my ads, so I'm outsourcing this, right? Ideally to somewhat of a creative strategist, but depending if you're just creating image variations, it could be ideogram, for example. I just taught them how to use ideogram. I have a very structured creative brief, right, where I'm telling exactly what I need, and I obviously using also AI to create these briefs, right, because they're already structured. So I'm using ChatGPT, I'm using Claude to create these briefs, and then after that, after I receive the creatives, I have to review them. So this is something that is very hard to outsource as a creative strategist, right? Because if you don't review them, you can just throw everything in the account. But after I review them, then I send to my typically media buying assistant. In these companies, if I'm already spending 50K a day, I typically always have an assistant or push to have a media buying assistant. So he uploads all the ads, right? I haven't, honestly, I just haven't used, maybe that's something I need to test out, but I haven't used these tools that say they upload all the ads for you. I like to have somewhat of a control. I don't know if they do the formatting correctly, if they check every placement and all that fun stuff, as I train my assistant media buyer to do, and to turn off all the crap of enhancements that change literally every week. You guys probably see that. So honestly, yeah, I don't know how these tools do that, but yeah, every week I see a new freaking AI whatever tool that Facebook is trying to push that is not good. And I don't want to test, because I want to do a fair A/B test for all my creatives, right? For the new batches versus the old batches. So I like having control for that, and I've trained a good set of assistants, or media buying assistants, to do that for me. So I don't spend like hours uploading ads. So yeah, it works really well for me. And then obviously I structure the campaigns. Very rarely I have media buying. And then it really needs to be a junior media buyer. It cannot be an assistant. Like a junior media buyer, sometimes even a intermediate or even senior media buyer, to actually structure the campaigns for me with those ads. But ideally I want to do it myself. Like unless really it's a structure that really requires hours of structuring, which is possible sometimes. Right? For example, if I were to test that strategy where I'm calling out the age for every ad set, I need to have 26 different ad sets, and literally need to change an ad per ad set, and the age. So I need to change literally every ad set in every ad. Then probably I would train my junior media buyer or even senior media buyer to do that. Right? I probably wouldn't be doing this myself. But for most structures, I prefer doing this myself. because there are a lot of details that can go wrong. And then obviously, yeah, it's the 80-20 of my time regardless, building the campaigns. So yeah.
Okay, so you kind of know what tools you're going to be using. You have the briefs ready, so you know these are the ads we need to make. This is how many, and this is like the ratio of images to video, and you have the scripts of what needs to be made, and then you have like a VA that actually goes into these AI tools to actually create it, make it, edit it, export it. So one quick question as well, because with the video stuff, these tools, they make the video, but do you also do like post editing as well? Do you send off to an editor to like finalize to like edit the thing, or do you just take the raw thing that AI makes and just review it and post it?
Yeah, that's a really good question. For a lot of ads, especially if I'm in testing phase, I'm gonna test them as they are, right? For example, if you're using ArcAds, right, the final result is testable, right? It's not good by all means, but it's testable for that specific angle, that specific avatar, that specific background, right? So I think it's definitely worth testing. Having said that, after you pass phase one, we already have some concepts that work, and sometimes you have some kind of budget going to variations of winners, for example. Then I'm going to have a video editor, obviously, to do the post editing based on my briefs as well, right? But it's the video editor doing that. So it's not the VA, obviously, because it takes some editing. But for example, hey, let's grab these winning hooks, plug in them with these new variations, with these new bodies, and let's test that, for example, right? Just to give you an example, I did that like last week. I put some motion hooks into the winning body ideas. I still change a little bit the bodies. I changed a little bit the hooks because I didn't want to look exactly the same, especially in the first 3 to 5 seconds. And that's what my video editor did, right? So it just changed from person to person. It went from VA to the video editor. I'm still obviously doing the strategy, but yeah, 100%. At some point, you're definitely going to need the video editor if you're doing this with videos.
Yeah,
At least for now.
Yeah,
maybe 6 months going to change.
yeah. I mean, there are AI tools that actually edit the video, but and you can like chat with the editor to like say do this and do that. But one question of like when it comes to the videos like as well, because obviously you have UGC, you have cartoons, you have different things, and you have the Sora and V over 3. Are you also using Sora and V, because those are very like they can get quite expensive as well, right? Because you're paying like quite a bit per second. So are you using Sora View 3, or are you more on like the UGC avatars and the cartoon stuff or whatever? Like which kind of category? Or are you using a mix of both? Yeah.
Yeah. A mix. In general, I would say at scale, just AI avatars, because it's definitely somewhat cheaper. There are a lot of tools that do that for somewhat cheaper. But I sometimes test, especially for the hooks, I test completely crazy hooks with Sora or VO3, because obviously they can create something that's completely crazy and really attention grabbing, and then it's not as expensive. Right? So yeah, but a mix of both. It really depends on the ad account. So for example, I was crushing with static AI based images for an art therapy client, right? So an art therapy, and yeah, static images were just crushing everything. So they were crushing videos, AI videos, non-AI videos, spokesperson videos, and other kinds of images. Started doing pretty well. And then after a while, she told me, well, you know what? A lot of people are complaining on the comments because I'm an art therapist, right? I do art for a living and I'm using AI images. So we had to stop using AI images, for example. And now, if we have to be very smart with the angle. So in the angle, she's saying something like, I don't know, you don't need to use AI to be a good art therapist. And then you have a crazy angle. You know what I mean? So you need to be very, very smart about it. If people know it's just AI generated, sometimes it's obviously not good. So it really depends on the avatar. But yeah, in general, AI avatars more than anything.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and for like guru businesses, because this is like what we do, right? Like core funnels, we only do core funnels, right? So we have the main guy be the like like Rush Ruffino, but guys doing like multiple 6-7 figures, that kind of range. So they're the face of the business, right? Like they are like some of us are like he's the face. So for like Alex Homo is like he's the face, he's in the ads, right? And obviously you have e-com and other industries. But for this industry, like what are your thoughts on even using like AI videos, given that obviously the paid Alex Hormozy or Sam Ovens, when you work with them, you're going to work with them, right? You're going to join their calls and stuff or their mastermind or whatever. and when you book a call, you're speaking to a human. What are your thoughts on using AI actors at the front end and yeah, in general? Yeah.
Yeah, these are obviously the ones that are still relatively hard to do that, right? I've seen, for example, I've seen Billie Jean the other day, but he's a marketer, so it's a very specific niche within the guru-led business in a way. But I saw Billie Jean using like AI for literally like the whole creative, and I've seen multiple cases of him just using AI. For example, nowadays, yeah, with Sora VO3, you can just upload the image of the guru, for example, and have an AI creative. But obviously, people know it's AI, and people think it's fun, and if it's creative enough, they're still going to watch it, right? So that's short answer. You obviously can still use AI if you're creative enough, but pretty much people know, right? So you're not pretending it's not AI. I think that's the main thing, right? You know it's AI, right? But you're so creative with your script, with your angle, and it matches your avatar so much that people don't care. That's the reality, right? Especially because typically for guru-led businesses, especially for business coaching and things like that, I think people won't care. Like if it gets results, great, right? Marketing coaches as well and stuff like that. Maybe if you go from more like holistic therapy, right, and something like that, maybe relationship coaching, whatever, then maybe people are going to be more skeptical. I haven't tested in these two niches, for example, right? People are skeptical, and if they know it's AI, even if you're not faking it, right, you're not pretending it's not AI, at least not clearly faking it, but then they won't like it regardless, right? Maybe, but that's a hypothesis you need to test. To be very, very honest.
Yeah, I mean, because my thing is more about like the trust factor across the funnel. It's like, okay, it might work on the front end, but like once they come in, you might be tracking the wrong people, and it could erode a little bit of trust across, because obviously you want them to book call and buy our 10K off or 20K, and it's like we use some AI stuff on the front end. So
Yeah,
versus Alex Somozy himself or Sam Evans being in the video.
yeah. One thing I always say is it depends on where the heavy lifting is in the funnel. So, for example, I think it worked really well for Billie Jean because he has a low ticket, right? It's a low ticket. So, at the end of the day, like it's not as trust based as obviously a high ticket, a direct call funnel, then high ticket already on the call, for example, right? But for example, if you're using an ascension funnel for these types of businesses, then there isn't as many issues as having just a VSL to call. An essential funnel would be, for example, having a sell liquidating offer on the front end, and then with follow-ups, with sales teams, with setters, and all the fun stuff, actually monetizing these leads on the back end, or straight on the upsells, already scheduling calls and all that. But people will already consume some kind of content from you, right? Maybe they're going to consume a course that has your face, right? And or maybe they're just going to have access to a bunch of setters and closers as well. So there's that. Obviously, for VSL to call funnels is a very specific type of funnel where they just hop you on a call, right? Especially if the founder is closing. In that case, honestly, I'll probably have the founder just record the ads and edit the ads, right? Ideally. Having said that, more and more, there are tools that are very close to being very, very good at cloning people as well. And if you're very smart with that, for example, just having, if you're doing, let's say, the PowerPoint style ad, right, where you have the little person on the bottom of the screen and you have kind of a PowerPoint or a presentation going on the screen as an ad, right? Typically, if the voice is well cloned and the voice cloning is already pretty much indistinguishable from the real thing, is really the lip sync and the face that's still hard for a lot of tools. But if it's small in the screen, people probably won't notice, right? But then it really needs to be really, really good. There's even a tool, to be honest, I haven't tested it, but it's called Clonify, right? And it promises that it clones the guru, right? It clones the spokesperson, and you're actually able to use it. If you guys want to test it and let me know how it works, because it's funny because for the two guru type businesses that I run, I told them to use that, and they were like, I don't want to clone myself. So there's the human factor as well, right? Not every client is open to cloning themselves, to be very honest, and giving the media buyer, the creative strategist, full range on using their face. So there's the human component, not just the is it going to perform or not, right? I think conceptually, I definitely think it can perform if it's done in a very smart way, right? Honestly, editing wise, it can even be indistinguishable from the real thing if you do smart editing, right? You can do like fast cuts, for example. If a TikTok type of editing is going to be much harder to see versus an ad where the person's just talking to you like this. You know what I mean? So yeah, I think if it's done smartly, it should perform. But the human component, yeah, it's definitely harder, and it depends on your funnel flow as well, right? But typically, yeah, if you have setters and closers, shouldn't be as much of an issue.
Yeah. Yeah. We tested in, like you said before, like pay per call and different offers, and the AI stuff actually outperformed like any UGC or whatever we did. Even our normal ads, the AI stuff actually outperformed. But definitely when it comes to the high ticket stuff, call funnels, guru based, there's still a lot to be seen and tested out. Yeah, I'm gonna have a look at Clone if I could be interested. But I do like the idea of the slideshow, the guy like in the bottom. Then obviously then they just focus on what's going on the screen. I think that one can definitely be. But also a big thing you said, and this is something I've noticed myself, is like image ads are very, very underrated. Like you can just run simple image, obviously just having great copy, and it just works, you know? So that's a big part. One question I have as well for you is, because obviously you're running a lot of ad spend, a lot of AI ads, you have assistants now doing everything for, making all these ads. Do you have something on the like tools to like automate the campaign management, duplication, automation, scaling, cutting down, like a reveal bot, these kind of tools, right? And there's even new ones now that will manage the entire ad account. There's AI agents now for ads, right? Facebook ads, literally you connect it through like a chat GPT interface. It does everything. I'm talking, it automatically does it too. Like, so it runs every day. It will check your thing. It will check your customer conversions. Yeah. So there's many different ones like that now. Do you use any? Would you use any? Let's put it that way. Yeah.
Yeah, in short, no, because also, I mean, there's so many nuances. For example, right? If you're just using a tool that's just going to check a snapshot of the campaign with no context, and I think that's why conceptually, I think it can work, because if you have an NA10 agents that really knows how to understand these nuances as well before even looking at the campaigns, conceptually, dude, I love AI, right? So conceptually, I think everything is information that can be processed, and then AI can understand it much better than us, process the information even faster, and do it even better 24/7. So conceptually, I 100% think it can work, right? Having said that, what types of nuances I see that make it much harder for it to work? Tracking nuances, right? Delay nuances. So, for example, for a lot of accounts, typically you're going to have a delay in a couple of hours, sometimes even for the conversions to even appear in the ads manager, right? And if you don't have that human experience to understand, you know what, this ad sometimes it has been working for weeks, right? It has a really good hook, let's say hook rate, and the intermediate metrics are good. So even though it didn't hit my typical cost per qualified call or whatever, right now, probably I think it's going to hit in the next like 24 hours, right? For some funnels, sometimes even the conversion just literally didn't appear, right? So for sales funnels, for example, where one sale can be the difference between being over or under KPI, sometimes it's just delayed attribution, literally, right? And how do you tell? How do you tell? So, for example, I have a supplements business that I invested on, and I pretty much spend zero time on it. Right? I have an ads manager there. I just review once a week everything that's going on and give them the structure to actually scale that. So that's a pretty fun business. We've made over $1 million a month, many months. So that was pretty cool. But there, it's funny because even a new business, with my experience, sometimes I'm learning new stuff as well from my ads manager, right? So I was telling him, hey, dude, like why it's 8 a.m. I'm checking the campaigns randomly because I love looking at campaigns and it's my money. So I was just like, oh, it's 8 a.m. I just woke up and I wanted to check my campaigns, right? I checked my campaigns to see if he was doing things correctly. And there were like 3 or 4 campaigns over and we have a very unique optimization strategy there that he's building. So when I outsource things, I don't necessarily want them to be 100% my way, especially because he's a really good guy and he's doing an amazing job. But results are there, right? But anyways, so we have a very unique optimization strategy where pretty much he's optimizing every day. So every day, he doesn't care as much about the learning phase. He's looking at the data. He's cutting very fast. He's studying a shitload of ads. Typically at the campaign level even. So it's completely different to what we said here when I manage my own campaigns, right? But anyways, but the KPI, let's say, was $700. If there's a sale, you let it run. If there are no sales, you don't let it run, right? Just to keep it very, very simple. And there are a bunch of campaigns that had spent over $700 with no sales, and they were running. So I was like, based on your own criteria, you should have cut these campaigns. What the hell are you doing, right? And then he told me, yes, but I'm looking at the campaigns every hour. The VSL is close to 1 hour, so I need to let them run for an extra 40 minutes right? Because at this hour, the leads who came in, they didn't have time to go to the checkout and actually purchase yet, right? So he was looking at it literally every hour. He had just looked at it. They were spending. They had just spent over the CPA target, right? But because of the way the funnel is set up, they need over 1 hour to actually go through the whole funnel setup and actually purchase. So there was literally a 1 hour delay where he needed to let them run a little bit longer than the target cost per action to actually be able to optimize them, right? Just to give you an example. And me just looking at it with no much context, it was barely impossible for me to know, right? And then he cut. He cut, I think, 2 of the 3, like a few minutes later, and then the other one actually got a sale because there was a person who actually went through the whole thing, and then suddenly it was like 2x ROAS, which is the goal for that specific fund, right? So this is a very specific example where there are so many nuances that for a lot of accounts, it's still very hard. I'm still very wary of just letting an agent do whatever he wants, right? And whenever we do that for automated rules, we know how hard it is already with Facebook automated rules. For example, there are delays, there are technical delays. If there's an outage, you're gonna get screwed, right? So it's the same thing with AI tools in general, right? I still like to have control of the 80-20, which is campaign manager, which I think is the 80-20 for a lot of businesses, right? Besides the creative strategy, obviously. And the business behind it. But then after that, if we're just talking about media buying, is really the campaign management itself, right? Not just uploading ads, but managing the campaigns. Having said that, conceptually, I think obviously if you're able to give all the context to an agent, right, all the media buying context for that specific account, for that specific funnel, conceptually, it makes sense. It could work.
Yeah. So there's the agents, right? They're the ones that will literally I can send the link after the call. You can see it. It does everything. Like I'm talking launching, scaling, and it has your preferences. So you tell it everything beforehand. And it's pretty decent, right? I haven't used it myself because the exact reason for us, our clients and whatnot, we're using call funnels. So we need to see we also need to see the lead quality because we can hit conversions, but if the quality is bad and they don't show up to the call and they're not buying things like that, because we want to optimize on the sales, right? We want to see which campaign got an actual sale on the call. So ours is even more complex because we got a call involved and stuff like that. So I'm definitely not keen unless to have it, because what's it optimizing based on, right? So my question for you as well is like, let's say more basic tools like Reveal Bot, Magics. Do you use those? If not, is there a reason you don't? And because there are a lot of people that do use them, right? So I thought with e-commerce, you're more likely to use it. But yeah, what's your take on those, like the more basic one, like Reveal Bot, Magics, and stuff like that?
Yeah, to be honest, I haven't used them as much. So once again, I think everything that involves media buying in general, I haven't been trying to automate them, especially because I do this at such a high scale that I think there's a human component. So I think that's my hot take, which is not hot, but it's just a take. But because there's a human component, right? There's corporate. They hired you, right? They hired Antonio because they know Antonio has spent $300 million in that spend. He has a shitload of experience, and I can be held accountable for anything that happens, right? If I outsource this to an AI, whatever it is, the simplest it is, right, and it doesn't work, right, especially on the media buying side of things, then suddenly they're like, well, I hired you, and now you're trying to outsource your work, right? So the human component can be very tricky, more than anything. So, and I think, by the way, this is one of the things that slowed down AI the most, if you think about it, in every industry, which is just a human component of people just not trusting it as much. And for a lot of clients, is I hired you, Antonio, and now you're trying to use a bot or even a simplest of AI tools to actually manage my campaigns. So I think because of this human component, I haven't tested it as much. And obviously, because I haven't tested it as much, I can't really say what I think of them. Even though, once again, I'm very open to this. So I think conceptually, any AI tool or bot can work. It's just that for campaign management specifically, I haven't used them.
Yeah, same here. We always, even with our clients for so many years, like we'll manually, like I'll get on calls with them, like we'll go through the data, we go through everything, then we decide, right, like, this is what we're going to cut, this is what we're going to scale. And also giving it that, at least for our industry, for call funnels and getting high-tech clients, we go through what Sam Evans did, right? Like the incubation period, you got to let things flow, and you got to, and especially for our space, the call funnels, like where did the high ticket sale come from? Because like, 10K, 20K sales, like, because you can have 3 campaigns, they're all generating calls and leads, but like only one of them is getting the sales from one ad, from one audience. So we want to make sure we scale the right one. I mean, what's your experience in general being with call funnels and, high ticket call funnels specifically? Like, are you running it now or just maybe your general experience?
I've always ran it. Yeah, once again. So especially when I started with Mike at his agency, I mean, he was specialized in coaching, right? And they were somewhat, I think, partners of Russ Rufino. So not only they ran their ads, but Russ Rufino was sending a lot of clients to the agency. So it was, and it has still been my bread and butter, right? Nowadays, I still run ads, for example, for Craig Ballantyne, who is a legend. Right? He's a legend. He's an OG in the space. I love the guy. I learned so much from him. It's high ticket, right? So he has packages from, I think now 6K to over 100K, literally. Right, so sometimes it gets very, very high ticket as well. It's for business owners, right? So, and it really works. So it's a great product to advertise. So 100% agree, especially when you're talking about different softwares, right? That you need to understand. So, for example, I still use Hyros, right? But then you have sometimes the CRM because sometimes somebody processed the payment via a payment processor that wasn't integrated with Hyros. So you need to check the CRM because you just had a 50K sale that didn't fire. You know what I mean? So you need to go there and check where it came from. And then you pull the lead into Hyros to see where it came from. And then you understand, oh, it was from this ad. And then it completely changes the game, right? So high ticket sale has that component of very few conversion points can completely change your analysis, right? Obviously, you still need to understand the statistical significance of each of them, right? Obviously, if, for example, one ad is getting dozens of qualified calls, but it hasn't produced a high ticket sale ad, typically, if it doesn't make sense, I'm still like, okay, maybe it was just the closers, right? It was just some outlier because it is qualified. So either your qualifying system is broken, which can definitely be the case, or you're just very, very unlucky for that ad, right? Which can sometimes be the case as well, right? And vice versa. Or you have an ad that sometimes, and this happens too, you had 5 calls, just one qualified, but that qualified closed a 100K sale, right? So this can happen as well. And then you have to pay really close attention to, is this actually statistically significant, right? Or was it just lucky? Now, typically in this case, I'll probably let it run a little bit more to see if the quality rate would improve, right? Or if this would happen again. And you really need to think like a marketer to understand why, right? And the why is very, very hard, but it's very, very important, right? For example, I'm going to give a very counterintuitive example, but for this ad, it's getting, let's say, every 5 calls, one is qualified, right? Which wouldn't be a good qualified rate for most businesses, for most high-ticket businesses. So most people would just say, oh, you got lucky, you got the sale. So I'm going to pause it. You could argue that, but I think it's a lazy approach, right? I would try to check if it's pre-qualifying people in a way where this pocket of people are not qualified for a reason, but the very few qualified that are going to go from this pocket of people are going to be so qualified they have a higher probability of closing. Because at the end of the day, you want to optimize for ROI. You don't want to optimize for cost per qualified call, right? If you could, you would just optimize for ROI all day long, right? So I could imagine a scenario where, okay, maybe they're not qualified because, I don't know, let's say they're all, let's say you're just helping digital businesses, right? You're just helping digital businesses, and for some reason, this ad is catering more to physical businesses, right? So most of the calls coming from this ad, they're for physical businesses, so they're not a fit. So if you have a small physical business, you don't care. But you do have an exception where if the business is big enough, right, you can still close. So you still have some physical businesses doing whatever, 10 million a month. And for these very few businesses, you can still close and have super high packages. I'm giving you a random example, right? But I've seen similar situations happening where most calls from that ad are not qualified, but the very few ones that are, they're going to give you amazing ROI because you still can close them and you're going to have high packages that you probably wouldn't be able to close for digital businesses, maybe. Right? So I'll give you an example where it could be counterintuitive. These are going to be exceptions, but in marketing, especially when you're talking about few data points, sometimes exceptions are rule, especially for high ticket.
Yeah, and like you said, the big one is the people closing on the call, right?
Yeah.
If you got a bad closer, you give them all the qualified leads. And this is where you said, well, like the context comes into play. It's like, are the leads actually bad? Is it the closer? Like what's really going on, right? Like, so yeah, I mean, the closer can have a big impact, and especially once you get a sales team in place and you round robin, then it's like a new guy comes in the team, and you got to look at what's is the lead actually qualified or not.
And so for a lot, I'm probably going to have to hop on another call, so we might be able to do a part 2 after that.
Because there's so many other things that'll be great to ask you about. But yeah, let's wrap up now. I mean, we've covered a lot of the points, a lot of the key strategies that people can take away, and hopefully you get on part 2 because there's so many more things that would be great to ask you. And because you have like a wealth of experience in the core funnel. I didn't know you had that much with core funnels, core funnels, ecom. So let's stay in touch. Let's get some comments on this, and we'll circle back hopefully. Thank you very much for coming on. I appreciate it a lot. Thank you.
Oh yeah, me too, brother. Appreciate the invite. And yeah, guys, let us know if you want a part 2, I guess.